but we're going to do this together. Okay, so again, this is where we are. So I'm going to go back to Unreal Engine. So I'm just going to double click on my project to launch it. And I want to finish off movement. So what I want to do here is I want to use blueprints to set up movements from scratch with a little project. Okay. Now, in order for me to do movement and all that stuff, and before we get there, I'm also going to add in the gun, right? So the gun is there in front of me too, and all that kind of fun stuff. So let's go in there. So first, in our mesh, I want to add another skeletal mesh. So let's add another skeletal mesh. So you can do that by coming up here, find some components. I click on mesh, and I'm going to select another skeletal mesh. I'm going to call this the gun mesh. Okay, good gun mesh. And then if I select at the right, so whenever I click on this, one thing I don't know if you guys noticed this, but if I click something on the left, then the right is context sensitive, right? So the details tab is reflecting what I click here on the left. Okay, so click here on the left, gun mesh. Now on the right, I want to select a gun mesh, which is this gun skeletal mesh. If I look at my viewport, the gun, unfortunately, is way down here. Okay, take a look at that. There's my gun. Okay, way at the bottom of that. That doesn't make any sense, right? Well, one thing that, let's compile and save here. One thing that you can see here in the mesh, the main mesh, which is the arms mesh, if I double click on the arms mesh right here, so again, on the right hand side, where you see mesh arms, and if I double click on this asset here like this, it's going to take me to this screen. Okay? And what this screen shows me is the actual mesh itself. Okay? But there's a couple of buttons on the top here. One of them is this little skeleton button. Okay? And on the left, you're going to see the skeleton, what it looks like. So again, I clicked on the skeleton on the right, upright, which opened up the skeletal mesh here on the left. That's what it did. And you can see if I scroll down, there is something called a grip point. That grip point is called a socket. So the socket, that is the grip point, right, is the place where you don't change anything. Do not rotate the socket or anything like that. You'll mess it up. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. So I've already done it for you. That's the answer. So if you look here at the gun, the grip point. That grip point, that is the socket. You can have unlimited number of sockets on your bones. This socket here is going to the right middle finger. That's where the gun is being connected to, right? So all we need to do is tell the gun to snap to that socket location, and it's going to be there. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back. I'm just showing you here. You don't have to do anything here. Just close these off. Go back to the blueprint, and then for the gun mesh, if you click on the gun mesh itself, on the right you're going to see sockets. Okay, and then there is this little folder with a magnifying glass. You're going to search for the socket that says grip point. Grip point. And if you click onto that, suddenly your gun snaps into position. Okay? Nothing for you to do. Just do like this. Now, in a later session, not today, but in a later lesson, we are going to adjust the gun so that way it's pointing in the right place. Like right now, it might be pointing a little bit off. But we're going to add a reticle. The reticle and the guns, what's we call it, the scope on the gun itself has to line up, or else it won't be correct, right? We need to do some micro adjustments that we're not going to do today. Today, we're just adding the gun. Okay? Let's run this thing again, and let's see if we can see the gun when we run it inside of our project. So I compile and save. Right, we go back to my test map, and if I press play, you can see that indeed the gun is there, but it's like way up here. Right? So why is that? Well, if I go back to the PowerPoint, from a positioning perspective, I might have some better numbers. Let's see if I do. Here they are. Here are the better numbers. So let's position our arms so that they're here. So 0.16 on the X, 716. Which means if I go back here, and if I go to the mesh arms, and if I put that number in here, that's the first one. So it's a little bit of an adjustment, on the y-axis. And then minus 104, which we should already have, but we don't. Minus 104. given you in the PowerPoint, and if I go back to here and run it again, then you should see something closer to this. So that not quite perfect yet, but it's getting better. Okay? And we're going to see better and better how we're going to start aligning this thing so that it looks a little bit better and closer to what a stage would look like. Again, you could have probably figured this out on your own. All you need to do is you would have had to move your arms around the camera. This is your eyes, right? Move the guns around so that it looks like it's here. It's a weird thing. There's a couple of additional problems here. One, the arms. All right, the arms are casting shadows right now. So if you actually look down the ground, there's a shadow of the arms, and there's also a shadow of the gun. You want to get rid of those things. That doesn't make any sense. We don't have a lot. So if I click on the arms mesh, and if I just type in cast, right, you can see cast shadow is there. Let's uncheck that. So no more casting shadow for the mesh arms. Same thing for the gun. You don't want the gun to cast any shadows either, right? Because that doesn't make any sense. And now, if I was to compile and save, go back to play, then we can see that there's no shadow anymore on the ground from the gun or the arms. Okay? One thing to note is that shadows are computationally expensive to run. And if you don't need them, turn them off. Okay, that's one thing you have to do. Okay, very nice. So now that we're here, now we want to make this thing move, and I want to do this in another folder. So first we need to set up our actions. Okay? So the first thing to do is I'm going to right click here in my content folder and add a new folder called input. There's my input folder. Inside my input folder, I want another folder, make another one, right, called actions. I can spell actions, but the word actions. All right? And then I want to go into my actions folder here. So I'm in content, I'm in a new folder called input, and then I'm in a new folder inside that called actions. All right? And inside the actions folder, what I want to do in here is I want to add, so right click here, and I want to go to input action. That's what I want to add in. Input action. And I want to add 3 of them. I want to name this first one IA_jump. Like so. It stands for input action jump. Next one, I want to do the same one. So input action, IA_move. And another one more. IA_look. Okay, those are the 3 actions that I want. Let's save all. Click save all here. So we know we're saved. There we go. Are you with me? So I've added 3 actions. IA jump, IA look, and IA move. The problem with IA, so let's begin with IA jump. If I double click on IA jump, we can see that the value type is a bool. But this makes sense. Bool means true or false. Am I jumping or not jumping? Right? Okay, we can close this one up. That's correct. Okay, well, what about the look? The look is not cool. I don't look and not look. It's more like I'm using my mouse and I'm using my X and Y coordinates to move my mouse around, which means we have to change the input type from a bool to an axis 2D vector 2D, which means I'm going to get input from 2 axes, the X axis for my mouse and the Y axis for my mouse. When I move my mouse around, I'm going to get input wherever I move it, right? That's why this has to be axis 2D. Same thing for my move action, right? This also has to be axis 2D. And the reason for this is because I'm going to get 2-axis movement. I can move to the right or left, forward, back. That's 2 axes, right? So that's the first part. So the first part is setting up my input actions. Let's save that. Save all. Now that I've got my input actions mapped out, like the type of input, now I'm going to go back to my input folder, and I want to add in a new input mapping context. This one. Input mapping context. So we're going to rename this to IMC, input mapping context, _FPS, right? Which is the first person shooter input mapping context. Save all, please. And then what I want you to do is double click on here, double click. Also remove this. By the way, if this version control is on right now, please change this version control to the same one. You don't need it. Okay? You've already got it locally. You don't have to do this here inside Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine's version control sucks. So we don't use it, we use stuff outside of it. Okay? On the left, you can see that I have some mappings. I want you to add the first mapping by clicking that plus button, and we want to select jump first. That's the jump. Now, what it does is it creates a space, a container for the jumping action, mapping. And what we want to do here is there's a little keyboard. Click on the keyboard and press the space bar, and it's going to now associate the space bar with the jump action. Okay? So whenever we press the space bar, the jump action will be activated or triggered. Okay? We want to do the other one, another mapping. I want to do this one for the look action. Here's the look action. And inside the look action, we just can't choose this anymore. We have to go to this little drop-down menu. We're going to go to mouse, and we're going to go to mouse X, Y, 2D axis. Okay? So that is the type of input. So what this means is I'm going to get input from the X and Y 2D axis of the mouse. I move my mouse around, this one getting input. But there's a problem. If I follow this thing, and if I move my mouse around, that means up, I'm going to look down. And if I look back, back is moved down, and then up is forward, it's up. That doesn't make sense. That's not how we play. We usually invert the mouse, right? We don't do it this way. So what I want you to do is, I want you to go to modifiers, and I want you to click plus, and then I want you to negate. I want you to add a negate modifier. Okay, and a negate modifier. But I don't want you to negate everything, just the y-axis. Does that make sense? Because the y-axis, instead of me going like, if I pull back, I go down, and if I push forward, I look up. It's when I pull back, I look up, and when I push forward, I look down, which is normal, right? So I need to invert the mouse for how this works, right? Next, I want to add a new mapping, and this time I want to map my move. Movement requires 4 of these mappings. So the first one is W, which is W key. And then I'm going to click this little button on the side here, and then click another one, which is going to be the A, and another one, which is going to be the S, and another one, which is going to be the D. So I've added these little kind of sub mappings, if you will, right? Now here's the thing. Typically, because I'm moving things with my WASD keys, the default is on the x-axis. Okay, I'll let you know that. So positive right on the x-axis is the good action, positive action. On left on the x-axis is the negative action, which means that if I want to go left, I've got to have my A button be negative, which means let's go to the A button and go to the modifiers and choose negate. Okay? It's okay if you negate it all, because all you're going to get input from is the x-axis here, and it's going to ignore the y and z anyway. Okay. Now the other one is the D is positive, though W is using the y-axis. So now I got to switch axes, which means I've got to swizzle. So in the W, I want you to go to the modifier. So the first one I want you to choose is swizzle input axis values. What swizzling does is it switches the order of the axis. Instead of it being X, Y, Z, it's now Y, X, Z. Which means the Y-axis is going to be mapped to this input, okay? And so that's the first thing, the Y-axis, so we have to swizzle. Okay, next. The opposite of the W is the S, so we're going to go back here and swizzle again. We're going to choose swizzle, right? But we're also going to add in negate. And the reason for this is because forward is positive, and backward is negative. Okay? If that makes sense. Okay, are you with me? All of these mappings are on the PowerPoint slide deck. If you missed something or you're unsure, check the PowerPoint slide deck. It has all of this for you. All right. Let's close this off now, and we're going to save all, file save all. And now we have all of our inputs input assets that we got. Okay, let's put this up on DevOps. This is a good place to put it up on DevOps. So again, I'm gonna go back to my open command prompts, and I'm gonna say git add value, git commit minus n, we'll say added input actions. Here we go. Okay, so we've done that. So now I'm showing you what I would do at the minimum. This is the amount of git, commits that I do on a regular basis. I add a feature, you add a commit. You fix a bug, add a commit. Go to the washroom, add a commit. Whatever. Add as many commits as you got in again, because you know what? At the end of the day, anything can happen between now, a working copy of your application and when this is working. All right. So now that I've done this part, I want to add in some blueprints. More stuff in the blueprints. So I'm going to go back to my FPS character blueprint, and I want to go back to the event graph this time. Okay? I don't care about the actor begin overlap and the event tick, so I can delete those. Okay, I don't care about that, but I do care about the event begin code. Right? What I want is to get access to the controller. So if I do get controller here, here's my controller, right? Now, remember what this is, okay? I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here, and I'm going to go back way over here to what we talked about earlier, to remind you of this map, okay? Controller is a type of actor, and there are two types of controller. The one that belongs to the pawn, and then for the player controller, that belongs to the character, right? So what I need to do is, when I do get controller, I'm actually getting the pawn's controller, but I need it to be of type player controller, which means I need to upcast. I need to cast it to a player controller. If I don't, it won't have all the functionality that I want, and it won't work properly. So, going back to Unreal Engine, that's what I need to do. I need to cast to player controller. Okay, that's the next step. Cast the player controller. And then I'm going to connect the execution pins here. Alright? There we go. Now that I've cast the player controller, by default, I want to show you this. If I go back to test map here, and if I go to settings, plugins, let's go to settings, plugins. I want to show you these plugins. So if I go to enhanced, if I type in enhanced, you can see that enhanced input is already activated. I don't have to activate this plugin, enhanced input, right? Okay. You're going to see later on, enhanced input is not activated on the C++ stuff. We have to activate many different stuff. Okay? But I want you to know that enhanced input by default, as of Unreal Engine 5.1, is automatically activated for you. So, what does this mean? This means that I can call enhanced input from here. So I'm going to go to the as player controller here, this part, this pin. And when I pull it out, and then when I let it go, I can say enhanced input, and the bottom thing is get enhanced input local player subsystem, this one, way at the bottom. And what this is going to do is do this. It's going to give me this little symbol. And then from here, this enhanced input local player subsystem, I want to go to the other pin on the side, the return value, and I want to add a mapping context. There's the mapping context. Okay. And connect the execution pins. Now, from here, the mapping context I can choose is IMC FPS. IMC FPS is the one we just made. That's the mapping context that basically maps all of my IA move, IA rotate, IA jump, that's. So it connects that into my FPS player. Now, I'm going to put my hand up and say, this is a way to do it. This is not the only way to do it. For example, this one it actually maps it onto my player. I could add this on to player state for someone to push, or a player controller. Because player controller is the thing. I can have a separate player controller that does this as opposed to put it in here. Okay? But for now, for learning, this is okay. And now I can kind of add in a comment. I can select everything, press C for my comment, and I can say something like added input mapping context. And I don't like the gray, so I'm going to change this this gray color, I'm gonna change this to black by clicking here and just pulling this down. And notice that there's black over here and a bunch of other colors. I'm gonna take this black color and pull it over here so it remembers black, and then press OK. Wonderful, that's my first thing. So I added my input mapping context. Good. Next, compile and save. I want to start adding in movement. The first thing I want to do is move. I want to move left, right, forward, back. So the way to do that is to right click and search for my input actions. You should be able to do this now, watch. IA underscore, and I can see all these things. IA jump, IA look, and IA move. Why? I made those, and because I added them into my system and I mapped them, they appear here in my blueprint as an option. So let's choose IA move, right? And that becomes a new, kind of a new event at the start of my blueprint. There it is. So it's interesting because input actions have a bunch of these things: trigger, started, going, cancel, a bunch of those things, right? What I need is I want to get my control rotation. What's that next? So right click here, okay, and I want to say get control rotation. This one, get control rotation, right? And then I also want to move right left, so I want to get the right vector. So I want to say get right vector, right? Here's my right vector. I don't want to connect these two things. I want to split the struct pin. And the way this works is, if I hover over the return value of get control rotation, and I right click, I can split the struct pin like this. Split the struct pin, which does this. Okay? And I can do the same thing for my get right vector. I can right click here and I can split the struct pin. Remember, what is a struct? What is a struct? Smart guys over here. Smart struct. Okay, what's a class? We talked about classes earlier. A class is a blueprint, right, for me to instantiate an object. So there are classes and there are structs. Classes, typically we have behaviors and properties. Structs are like classes. The difference is that classes are private by default in C++, and structs are public by default. Structs are used to create your own data type, right? Like, for example, vectors. Vectors are great for being struct, okay? And what we want to do here, structs have, in this case, 3 floats, X, Y, and Z, instead of 1. And then I can split the struct to make all the X, Y, and Z floats appear for me. I can make them visible. That's what I'm doing here. I split the struct. Okay? Now what I want to do is I want to connect the roll, sorry. Let me get this wrong. I always get this wrong. I want to connect. I love this. Now, I want to connect, I was right. The roll to the roll. I want to do this. I'm going to take this pin connected here, and it's the yaw to the yaw, right? And then what I want to do is I want to add movement input, right? And I want to kind of connect the result from this into the movement input, and when it's triggered, I want to take that execution pin and fire it over to the add movement node. And so it kind of looks like this. However, I want to be able to scale this on my input. So the way this works is, on the left, you have an action value. That action value, remember, is up by vector 2D. So I want to right click and split the struct pin here as well. I want to take the X action, the X value, and scale it that way. And this comes from my my DP. My DP is the positive X action, and the AP is the negative X action. So it'll switch it A or D depending on what I press, right? I want to double click on one of these lines like this. It creates a routing node, a reroute node, and I can create a couple of them like this to make it look nice, or nicer. All of that. There we go. So that is my move, and I can put another comment on that. And I want to move right or left. That's what this does. Again, I don't like the color, so I can change the color to black. We're going to save it. There we go. That's the first first one. That's moving right and left. Okay. Let's also move forward and back. And the way to do that, look, I can copy some of these things, right? Here's something I can copy. I can copy this one. And if I control click, I can copy this one too. So if I copy these, control C, and I go over here somewhere, I can control V, and then I can have access to that stuff. Like here. So what I'm missing here is get control rotation, but instead of using the right vector, I need the forward vector. So I get forward vector, get forward vector. Here it is. The forward vector has to also be split, so I'll split the struct pin, this one. And all I need is the yaw connected, and this goes to the road direction. This one connects to this one here, it's the execution pins, because the line of programming flow continues. And now I need to scale it by the Y input, because I'm going up and down, not left and right. And I can use some reroute nodes here and here, so that it looks nicer. And here I can add a comment, so I can highlight these nodes, press the C button, and I can say something like move up, down, or forward, back. There. And I can change the color of this to black. And now is a great place to test out moving up, right, left, forward, and back. Are you with me? Again, all of this is available through the PowerPoint slide deck. If you missed them. Okay, so we'll check the PowerPoint slide deck. We need to get to go. All right, let's try it out. So, two ways to try this out. I can compile and save, and I can try it out here by pressing play. And then I can see this, if I can move left and right, press again, left and right, forward and back, do that. It's okay. The other place to check it is right inside the blueprints. So if I press this play button in the blueprints, it'll bring up a little window here, and I can go forward and back, and then left and right, no problem. So I can do that too. Okay? Are you with me? Can you move forward and back to left and right? All right, so now let's put this up on DevOps. I'm able to move. So add a new feature, so git add dot, git commit -n, we'll say added left, right, forward, back, movement. Okay? That's the first thing we've done. All right, great. Now that I've done that, let's add the up and down movement. So again, for that, or the look movement. So I want to right click here and I want to type in IA_look. That gives me the look event. Okay? And just like before, I want to do a few things differently this time. So one thing to note with this one is I want to add in the controller yaw and the controller pitch. So that's what I need. So I'm going to go here and go add controller yaw. Here it is. And then here is add controller pitch. There it is. So I got those two pieces, those two nodes. And then from an action value, we split the struct pin and I'm going to drag out here. And this one is going to go over there. Nice. Maybe I'll need to reroute. And what I'm going to say is, when I connect them, make them all straight. By the way, if you want to make these straight, you can choose to node and press the Q button, and then they become straight or aligned together. Right? If you press all three nodes, like this one, and this one, and press the Q button, then you can try and make them align as much as best as possible. Or you can try it on your own. And the next one is the add control yaw. So yaw is this way, right? Where I want to go left and right like this. I want to look left and right. And that's what this is. So this is look left, right. That's what this is. And this is look up, down. That's what that is. Okay. And I want to make these black. So we can stay consistent though. All right, so that's good. So we've added look left and right. Oh, there's one thing we need to do. If you look at the PowerPoint slide deck, it says we need to also change the use controller location pitch on the font. Okay? And go back. This means I click here on the FPS character, and then if I type in pitch, right, there is a use controller location pitch at the bottom. There's a little check mark right here. This one, check it. So what this does is, depending on what my controller is looking at, I'm using the pitch. If I don't have this on, I won't be able to look up again. It's off. It's checked off by default. Okay. Okay, now that I have this, let's test it locally. Let's test it right here. So I can now go up and down, and I can look left and right, and I can move forward and back while doing stuff. Okay? No problem. All right, this is great. I've got look action, so I'll look it, hit that dot, hit commit my sample, say added left, right, up, down, look. Yep. The last one is jumping, and jumping is super easy to do. All we need to do is go IA jump. There we go, IA jump. Here it is. IA jump has two built-in functions. One of them is jump, and the other one is stop jumping. So you can actually search for those. Watch. If I type in jump here, here's one, and then I can also type in stop jumping. You can see that I have those two nodes that come up. Those are built-in, nodes because I'm using the character itself. The character has character movement. Character movement has built-in jumping. Okay. So now I can say when this is different. When I press the space bar, when I start pressing the space bar, I want to start jumping. And when my space bar is completed, I want to stop jumping. Okay, that's what this does. So then I can just highlight these and say jump. Okay. And let's test it. So I should be able to press space bar and jump. Looks like it's working fine for me. And I can jump, and jump, and jump, and move, and jump, and look, and all that good stuff. Okay. Wonderful. Let's add that in. And that completed my movement with blueprints. So let's say git add up, git commit -m, completed movement input with blueprints. And I'm going to push that up to demos. Questions around this? Yes.
If I close out of command prompt, so how do you
How do you get there again? Yeah. So if you close, let's say I close out of this command prompt. Oh man, I closed my command prompt. Well, as long as you have this, right? What you could do is you can just go to your start button and type in CMD. It'll bring up your command prompt again, but it's not pointing at the right place. Switch to C drive. So C:, CD space after that. And then what you want to do is you want to kind of slow up one level and then drag and drop this like we did before, which will take you to that thing. And now you're back to normal. By the way, you should still remember all of the last commands you put in.
Thank you.
All right, are you with me? So this is the thing. So now that we've added this in, we're able to now move with blueprints. And this is half of your in-class exercise 2. In-class exercise 2 also wants us to use C++. Remember C++ at the beginning of this lesson? Now we're going to actually add C++ to Unreal Engine. Guys, I'm going to just put a disclaimer at this section. This is the hardest part. Okay? And it's not the hardest part because C++ is hard, in this case. It's the hardest part because your tooling can suck and it'll stop working. Okay? So, this is where my friend over here, who's been having trouble with right-clicking and stuff like that, may really be frustrated after today. Alright? Because if you haven't set up Unreal Engine properly, or Visual Studio, if you haven't set it up the way I've set it up, by the machine in front of you, which I set up properly for you, which is just fine. So just be aware of it. You know, I can set your machine up, worst case scenario, okay? I promise you, if you and I spend some time together, if your machine at home is not working properly, book some time, then I'll spend time setting you up, okay? But doing it here in class is impossible. It just takes too long, right? So it's gonna waste of time. So, I'm saying this disclaimer because here be dragons. Here we go. All right. Let's go. Back to test map. At this point, you should have saved everything, save all. Okay. You should have revision control working. So your version control, you push up to DevOps at this point, you're good to go. And now at the top, let's go to tools. And let's go to new C++ class. Let's do that. New C++ class. Now, there's some options. We're going to choose character. And we're going to choose next. And we're going to rename this character, this class, FPS character, like this. FPS character. I'm staying here for a second until you join me. Get out of the way. I know some people are ahead of me, and you probably zoomed ahead and you think everything is fantastic, but unfortunately, not ready there. So here goes the nurse. You get a new C++, and then you choose character, and you're going to change that to FPS character. FPS character. Do it already? Rules at the top. Rules all the way down to the top. There. Do you see the rules? Character. And then let's rename this to the FCS character. Okay. Anyone else not thought about? All right. Okay. Did you go to tools? Thank you, my friend. Go to DC++, and then change this character. And then next, and then we'll change this to FPS character. How are you doing? But you have my PowerPoint.
Yeah, okay.
Don't worry. Okay. Are you guys okay? Tools. Is that all right?
Yeah, I already.
Oh, you already did this, okay, you're ahead. All right, so, let's press create class, see what happens. Okay, here we dragons, let's go. So when you do this, what C++ is going to, or Unreal Engine is going to start doing is reconstruct your project. It's going to add a source folder to your project. That's what it's going to do. It's going to generate new files for you, new structure, because now, from now on, see, it says project now includes sources. Please close the editor and don't write. Let's press OK. And it's also saying, excuse me, successfully added class FPS character. However, you must recompile the FPS starter project module before it will appear in the content browser. Would you like to edit the code? Yes. And then it brings up Visual Studio. All right, now we had previously our Visual Studio project open as our little toy. Our little toy application was this little toy application. Please close this down. So save it all, close it down, and let's not interfere with our video. Okay, this is our new project, okay? In Unreal Engine is done. So we're going to say File, Save All, and we're going to close down Unreal Engine's editor. Let's do that. Close the editor. Close it down. All right, now you may get a little option that says, you know, if you want to configure, uncheck that checkbox, go back to that tab, uncheck that checkbox that says configuration. I don't have it here because I unchecked it last day. And then close that up, remove that tab. All you need is these two files right here, okay? You also have a problem I got to talk about, okay? So let's talk about this problem. And I'm just going to kind of collapse all these things in this solution first. So again, close Unreal Editor, please. If you don't close the Unreal Editor, you'll mess yourself up. Close it in. Close it in. All right. On the right, notice that there is an FP starter project here, and inside there, right inside the FP starter, there's a source folder. Inside that source filter, there's a FP starter project. And this is where you should be. Okay. I want you to bring up the build.cs file. This one, the build.cs file. Double click on it. It looks like this, please. Okay, what is this then? Remember I told you in Unreal Engine that by default, enhanced input is included? Here's not. We have to include enhanced input if we want to do it right, alright? The same way we've been doing it, okay? So, like I said, open up this build CS file, close down Unreal Editor, keep it open, add things will have the 50. Alright. So here's your build.cs file. What I want you to do, right, is here inside of this modules add range, I want you to add enhanced input. That's what I want to add, enhanced input, and save. Again, this is inside of FPS Starter Project, FPS Source, FPS Starter Project, FPS Starter Project.build.cs, which is actually a C# file. This is live. How we doing? Why can't you get that? That's okay. Where are you? Go to Visual Studio. We'll do the demo. Guys, you can't Visual Studio now. Don't remember those. Right? Let's go to Solutions Store. Blast all this. Right? Blast all this. Good? Okay, I have to check you guys, because if you don't do this, you'll be lost forever in a pool of muck. Okay? And we don't want that to happen. All right, enhanced input. So Unreal Engine in C++, what they've done is they've created a modular system. So nothing is available in C++ unless you tell it to. Remember? I said that it's all like minimal, right? So here I'm adding in enhanced input. And what this does with enhanced input is it will add that piece to your, I will add this piece to your thing. But the thing is, you have to build this in, right? Our project is not built. So here's what we're going to do now. And this is where bad things can happen. Okay? Ready? I'm going to press Control F5. And let's see what happens. Does my project build or does it fail? This morning, it failed. Yours might build. It really depends on your setup. And every computer, no matter how many times I've done this with images and whatever, has different results. For example, mine might pass this time around. The last time I did this, it failed, right? And this is the first time. And what's happening is, it's trying to rebuild my project altogether. I'm going to show you a fallback, a way of guaranteeing the build instead of it failing, like it looks like it's already done for some people. I can see it from here, right? Some people it failed, other people it passed. Right? So it depends on who it is, right? You passed for you, right? So far. And by the way, no difference in code. Just sometimes it builds, other times it fails. It has nothing to do with anything, right? We have the same configuration guide. Remember, I built every image the exact same way. But some computers work, other people it doesn't work. Doesn't matter about the same thing. It's just the way it is. So it's a little finicky that way. Now it's taking some time, and you can see that it's doing its thing. You have to wait for it. Okay? Don't stop it. Stopping isn't going to make it go faster or whatever. It's either going to fail or it's going to succeed. That's it. So give it a chance. If it fails, what do you do? Okay? What do you do if it fails? So you don't have to wait for me. This is what you do. Okay? You can go to your folder structure. So for ICE2A, here's what I want you to do if it failed. Close down Visual Studio. Okay? If it failed. Mine didn't fail yet, but I made. Delete the following folders. intermediate, saved, right? If there's a binary, get rid of that one, and derived data cache. Get rid of those 4 folders. Binary, intermediate, saved, and derived data cache. Delete those. Okay? That's what you would do if it fails. Like, it looks like mine's not even going. Mine just like stalled. Mine's not even failed. Okay? By the way, you can cancel it if it's not working properly. Like mine's like this. You can always go to build, and you can go to cancel. You can cancel your build. Control break. Right? We'll cancel the build. And if it still doesn't cancel, and if it still doesn't close somehow, right? Then you can just do Alt F4, and then or Control Shift Escape, and I can just manually pull it down, right? As an example. Okay. There. So I can just look at, like, Microsoft Visual Studio, and I want to just end text. There. And I can make it do it what I want it to do. All right. So let's suppose mine failed. I want to show you what a failure looks like. Okay. So I want to delete the derived data cache, the intermediate, and the save files. I'm going to delete those. Right. So I'm going to delete. Here we are. Okay. And once I've deleted them, I'm just going to minimize everything else so you don't get confused. Once I've deleted those files, then, and this is where I go back to you, my friend, you will be able to do this because you don't have access to doing this because you can't associate your files properly. I right click, and then what I want to do is I go show more options, and then where it says here, generate Visual Studio project files. Do that, generate Visual Studio project files. What it's going to do is it's going to show me if there's a problem. Like, for example, fail to generate project files somehow. Okay? This is possible. This is a possible outcome. Fail to generate project files. Okay? If that happens, and if I launch Visual Studio, sometimes launching Visual Studio again might save me. So it says project 30 out of whatever. And it has to build from here. That's something that can happen as well. Because I interrupted the build, right? Other ways you can do it, you can also do a clean solution. So build clean solution. That's why I said Derby Dragons here. It's even worse this morning, right? There's my clean solution. Clean solution removes all the files. That's what it does. And then what I can do is try and build again. So you can build by Control F5, right? And what this will do, of course, now it'll definitely fail because there's not enough files. There it is. That's what I was hoping to see. And then, this is good, I like that. I can close it down again and go back to here. And let's do that again. Let's generate Visual Studio project files. And hopefully this time it will not fail and it will work. Just gotta give it some time. Taking a hell of a lot of time, but I'll try it right now. So stuff that what can I do if I messed up? What is the thing that I can do? What can I do? If I totally messed up. Yes. No. Revert. It's up on GitHub. Like worst case scenario, or sorry, DevOps. I didn't push this change. I can revert. I can go back to my previous version that was working. I had a working version before. This is a great example of where DevOps might be a really good thing to do. Okay? You can clearly see that I'm plugged here. That this is not working. Right? Like it's not doing anything. It's just like literally like faked. It's done. Right? So how do I revert? Well, here, let's go back. It's installed, and first app, put it up, right? And then what I can do is I can open my stuff in my terminal here, right? Or, sorry, I can use my command prompts. And in here, I can take a look at my last updates. I can say git status. You can see this is the stuff I've done, right? And then I can also look at git log. And you can see that the last thing I did, but when I did anything at all, right, is I did added input actions, and then I did left-right movement, you know, as an example, and somehow it didn't do my last push, like I've lost something. Okay, you can clearly see that there's a problem. Look, I've got like my commit, my added input actions, add left-right forward movement, and up on DevOps, this is interesting too. Let's refresh. Let's refresh here, right? Let's see what I got, right? Because it'll tell me all my commits. So added left-right movements, and if I go to my history, that's the last thing I got. Actually, what happened was, look guys, it stopped pushing to DevOps. It didn't have a successful push somehow. So I'm back here where I added left, right, forward, back movement. That's my last push somehow. It's terrible what happened to it. Terrible, right? But not unrecoverable. Not unrecoverable. And what I can do is I can step backwards. Two ways I can do this. I can clone our repository again from this location, from this point in time. That's one way of doing it. Whole new repository, right? I can clone it, get rid of my E-class exercise, or I can try and revert. And the way I revert is this commit, right? So the commit itself is a point where I can revert, like this one right here. This is the commit that I can revert to. My last good commit, okay? Somehow, didn't work. So I can take this, and then I can do something like this, git revert, and then I can kind of type in that commit and press enter. And it says, error, your local change to the following files will be overwritten by the merge, right? Please commit your changes with stash them. So I can say something like git stash, right? And then, once I've stashed those changes, I can do that revert again. I can do this revert. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, so here are some changes to be modified, blah, 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 blah. Do I want to do this? I want to revert added left and right movement. This reverts commit number, blah, blah, okay? So I could do it this way. You can see there's like issues doing it. Like I have to do this, lots of work. Or I can be really lazy, which is something that I can do here. And I'm just going to go back up here and make a brand new folder, right? I can actually come to this point, and I can say something like git clone. Okay, this is true. This is actually valid what I'm doing. And if I go back to my repo, let's go back to the repos for QA. So I have everything saved in this location. Here's my QA, right? Then I can clone. Here's my clone. This is my clone, address right here. So I can copy that and go back here. And now I know it's called 2A. So if I clone, that means I have to take the risk. There's a risk here where I can do it in another folder altogether. Let's do it in a backup folder. Here, let's do it in backup. Make a new folder. There we go. And I want to work in here, not in the folder, because otherwise it'll clash, where I'm going to be in the wrong folder, right? So it'll be the same thing. So let's just do it in the backup, and do like that. There we go. Really bad, okay? And then let's try this again. Git clone, and then do this, we'll copy this, go across here, right click, and press enter. And now I'm going to pull down my changes. Now it's 1.4 gigabytes. So it's going to take a moment. Here it goes, right? And my changes will be pulled down in another folder. And my other bug folder, I can forget about. Because I'm good, right? So who had this problem? Who completely crashed? You can revert back to your last changes, right? And I'm going to fix myself in a second. Here I am. And then if I go back to backup, here I am. Here's my backup. This is now my new ICE2A. If I just double click, it'll rebuild itself, right? And I'll be able to launch and really where I am. Okay? So this is the value right here of version control, right? It doesn't, I somehow, for whatever reason, didn't go to DevOps, my last changes. All those commits I made. But I'm not completely behind, right? And where I am, if I go look at blueprints, let's see where I am right now. I'm at this point. This is the last point that I made, so it's not so bad. I can just do them again. So AI look, here we go. And this is that back in. So we know that it's going to be yaw, right? So I think it's that point yaw. Let's go back here really quickly. That's It's not that bad. Add controller yaw inputs. Go. One sec, guys. Let's try that again. And controller pitch. There we go. And this control is this disconnect this up. There we go. Press it out. And split up these input actions. I can't believe it crashed like that. First time to hear, that's for sure. And I'm not going to put any comments to be through. And let's do a jump. There it is. And we'll say that started is going to be jump. And completed is going to be stop jumping. There we go. So that's done. Now we'll test it out. And we'll see if it works. That should. Said. What happens here? Oh, it's here. There we go. Set this up and okay. Oh yeah. I also have to change my use control rotation pitch, which I'll do in a second. Go. Pitch. Okay. There we go. I'll save. And let's just do the testing. Okay, there we go. And jump. Good. And I'm going to put that up on DevOps now. So that way it's good. So let's say git add dots. Git. Not get the dots everywhere. Git add dot. Git commit minus m. And we'll say completed. I don't know what happened, but it didn't push last time. Let's try this out and see if it actually did push. Okay, good. And let's check DevOps, which is what I didn't do last time. And let's see what happens. That's weird. Okay, good. So that's updated now, so I can move. Okay, let's do that again. So tools, use C++ class, character, next, and we'll go to FPS character. Weird. That's okay. And let's create that code. We lost 20 minutes. Right? That's how it happens. Like I said, you're dragon. It happened to me. Yeah. All right. More than anyone else. So that's great. Good learning. Is what I always say. So who succeeded? Who actually did get through and launch? Yay! If you were one of the lucky ones that succeeded, did you guys fail? Did you do it again? Did you figure it out? Okay. You guys succeeded? Yes or no? Brandon, you did, and you did. Did you do the things I said? Please, delete or okay. By the way, if you can see, guys, friends, that this Unreal Engine is not, for whatever reason, it stopped behaving properly, right? Because look, it's literally either crashed or something's gone wrong, right? So it is what it is. So. What do we do? Well, I have a previous thing from this morning. That's a good thing. Let's see if I can launch that one without screwing it up. That's this one. So what you should see is that in the end, what I would do is disconnect everything like this, and then if I was to run it, I can run right from C++. That's the idea here. But I'm seeing that here it is. It's chugging along, but I'm running two instances of the same engine. So there you go. Yeah, it is running. It's just running really slow. So that's what we get to. It looks like this is bugged again. It's bizarre, guys. But this morning was running great, and later on, not great. So here's what it is. So what to do? Should I cancel it? I could. I could do again, I could do a Control-Shift-Escape. but I'm having, this is problems, this is not normal. Like, what I would do next if I was, you with your computer, is I'd probably reboot. That's what I would do. I would say, let's just reboot, you know, kind of thing, because that is just not normal. Like, you know, that's not normal action. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna literally reboot my machine, and this way, it's gonna take a second, doesn't take long. This machine's pretty good. Luckily, I'm not recording. Right? Last week was a shambles. Last week I was in the middle of recording and my computer shut down in the other class. Right, so it is what it is. But now this time around I'm not, so it's pretty good. And I'll just wait till we start and we go. So if you're made it, continue. I want you to continue. Just don't wait for me. Keep on with the stuff so you can catch up. Okay? If you didn't make it, I want you to delete the saved, derived data cache, binary, and the intermediate files, thank you. And then I want you to right click and regenerate your files. And when you regenerate your files, it's going to do everything you need to get moving. And the hilarious and ironic part about this, I can't call IT and say your computer sucks because they're on strike. Nah, they're not gonna. I don't want to. These guys. Admittedly, the problem with IT right now is they have bigger problems than me. Start up. And it could be that. I don't know. We'll see in a second. Okay. It's probably buggered again. So now I have to probably download one more time. Seriously. Yep. What I'm gonna do is say no, and I'm going to say, so that should get everything. Looks like it just crashed. Let's see if I can generate my good product files without it crashing again. That's a good sign. If not, if this doesn't work, I'll just re-download it from the plant from DevOps, and it should be good. Because it looks like it's whatever buggered it is not buggered it anymore. Which is a good thing. I swear my video this morning was better. Okay? It actually worked out, everything ran. Okay, it worked out fantastic. All right, so there. So now you see what I've done. So this is what you would have done. If you deleted your stuff, where you go? Okay, check the so yeah. Right click, generate files. So again, I would revert, go back, download it again. What I do. All right, so this is me being. I'm back to thing. I'm back to working fashion. Take care. And then the main thing here is that we want to test to make sure things are okay. So here I can see that everything's good. I'm happy. And then the other thing is in here you'll have a C++ class like this. Okay, that's what you should see. Now this is after we deleted the file. So what I did was going back to here, I deleted the intermediate, saved, derived data cache, and binaries folders. That's what I did. I'll do it again for you. I'm pretty confident it's going to work. So here's how it works. Watch. intermediate, saved, derived data caches for these people here, that my friends who aren't working, and binaries. So these are the folders I get rid of, right? And then what I do is I delete them, and then once I've deleted them, right click, and I go to show more options, generate Visual Studio project files. So that puts saved and intermediate back, right? You can see that this is what it's going to do. And then once it's done doing those two things, right? Then I can launch this again, which is going to ask me to rebuild the project. I'm going to say yes. And then once that happens, it's going to show me rebuilding the project. In a second. There it is. And then once the project is finished being built, it's going to launch Unreal Engine. It's going to put back the binaries, everything else I just deleted, and it's going to launch Unreal Engine. Guys, this is almost like guaranteed to work, almost. All right? And the reason for this is because you are forcing Unreal Engine to rebuild. Okay? You need to know how to do this because you will run into this problem like I just ran into. It's a random thing that happens with Unreal Engine, and it's nothing that I did. I did the exact same thing that some of you did, some of you worked, other people didn't, right? So, it is what it is. Okay, so that is the build. It takes me back here, and then once I'm back here, I can close this off again. And let's get back into Visual Studio for a second. So I'm going to fix this problem. Okay. So what I said before was, in Visual Studio, one thing that's good about this now is I know I've been able to build, and I know it's back to work next to Unreal Engine. This is a good thing, okay? So once I've got this going, the connection, then if I go into my source build folder, and I must put in that enhanced input. If I save this and rebuild, so again, I've closed up Unreal Engine, Control F5. And if it doesn't work again, the Control F5, that's okay, because at least at this point, I'll get a build error. And because I know pretty much I've already connected properly to Unreal Engine, I rebuilt everything reliably, so I'm pretty confident. As long as that little build output window is moving and I get this, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it failing, because what am I going to do now? Close this down. Seriously, delete my derived data cache, intermediate binaries, and save files. This is something I gotta do sometimes. And once you're there, right click and regenerate your, so this again, right click and generate Visual Studio project files, which is gonna redo that. I'm gonna relaunch Unreal Engine, and once it's done that, it's gonna rebuild, recompile and build my project. Okay? Which is what I wanted to do. So this is good. Right, so then I'm going to just double click here. It's going to say, do you want to rebuild? And I'm going to say yes. And if everything goes well, then enhanced input is going to be added in as a launcher. And then I can continue with everything else. And will or it won't, right here. Good, we're good. We're good. So this basically is, like I said, a pretty much guaranteed method. Did you guys make it work? Yes? We'll see. Did you make any pictures? No? Don't revert. Just download download it from DevOps. Clone from DevOps. Very some desktop music. All right, so now that I've done this, I can close this off, and I can open up Visual Studio, and I know that it's working because I've done this. So I can go back to my PowerPoint. Yeah, here's my PowerPoint, and in my PowerPoint, I have some steering instructions for you guys, right? So let's go to that point in time, which is basically right down in here. So I did this part, and a word about pointers. I got to talk about pointers a little bit before we continue. Connor may talk about pointers. So does anyone know what pointers are? Pointers are, basically you're looking at a memory address instead of value. That's what they're used for. In Unreal Engine, we use them all the time. As opposed to looking at memory addresses, we look at pointers. In effect, they're references to our objects. That's what they are. We want to pass by reference, not by value, because when we pass by reference, it's there's zero overhead. That's what these are. So I kind of put a little section there for this. What I want to do now is when I'm back into Visual Studio, I've got these files in folders. Let's open up your FPS character.h. So here's the next part of your in-class exercise. I want you to get rid of, please do this, get rid of all of your comments. So no comments. Let's get rid of all your comments. Like this, of your .h. Okay, let's do that. And I want you to move. Notice that the .h here has two public sections. There's a public section here, and there's a public section down here. The reason why Unreal Engine sets this up, you can have as many public sections as you want, but they want to separate the structure function from everything else. And I like to put those together, so I take this and I want to make one public section like this and get rid of this one. Okay? So it's less confusing for me. All right, that's the first change I made. Are you with me? .h changed. Okay, next. Now that I've fixed the .h as an example, and I want to fix the .cpp the same way. So I want to get rid of all the comments. So no more comments. These are just like boilerplate. They're boilerplate comments. I know what these things do, so I don't need these extra comments. It's just taking a fix. Okay. Now, commit time. Now that I've done this, right, and I've removed my comments and stuff like that, it's a great place to do a commit. Now, there's a couple things to do. I can bring up my folder again, right, wherever I am. Go to my folder, my actual working folder, and what I want to do here is I want to open in terminal, and I'm going to say something like git added git commits -n, we'll say added C++ FPS character. That's what we did. So this way, if I bugger out again, right, guess what? I can always pull at this location. I did this time, just like I did last time. Remember, git just saved my life. Instead of me having to do all that work again, I had part of my work to do, right? So it kind of like, I was able to get back to that location at that time, right? So I'm back, almost back to normal. Okay, great. So now next, now that I've done this, I want to add in some functionality. So the .h, this is interesting, but I want to add in the virtual void, here we go, virtual void jump method. And this jump method is built in. Remember, because on Unreal Engine, we have that jump method that I just added in. I said jump. This is part of that when I went to Blueprints, it was there. So I'm just doing the same thing here. Okay. I also want to add in two callbacks. So I want to add in some input callbacks. That's what I want, right? And so what it's going to be is, again, a void move. And the move function is going to have a particular input type, which I'm going to show you in a second, which is the F input action value. Now, let me just go back to that and show you what that is. So, I could put in, like, construct, right, F input action, like input mapping, which is what that is. Let me go back to that. You can see that that is a U, that's a class. Class U input mapping context. I can do that. Right? And here, but I'm getting an F input action value. That's what I can put in there. So I can put a construct, right, as an example, and then F input action value, as an example, and it could look like this. I could do that. But that's really wasteful. I don't recommend you do this because what I'm doing is I'm declaring the struct here instead of inputting it here. Instead, don't do this. Don't do a struct part. Instead, what we want to do is forward declare. So up at the top, it's a promise. So forward declare, right? And we can just put in class F input action value, and that is a promise that we're making. That's what these are. So forward declarations are a promise that these classes exist somewhere, and we're going to, kind of implement them later. Okay, that's what they are. So that's what this is. F input action value, a const, and that's what this is. We want to do the same thing for the look. So we're going to do the look function. There it is. Right? And these two functions, I call them input callbacks, but basically what they're going to do is going to do the movement and the look for us. Then we have a series of properties. So here's our properties, input properties. Right? And these input properties, we just like make these comments the same, just because someone's going to say, you use this and that, and then over here something else. So we want to use view property, right? And we want edit anywhere with a category of inputs. And what I want is, we're going to use something called a T object pointer. And the object pointer is going to be view input mapping context, right? Input mapping context, right? And this is going to be called the FPS context. Okay, so view input mapping context is a class that this thing doesn't know about. So we're going to forward declare it here. I'm going to say class view input mapping context. And by the way, this F shouldn't be a class, it should be a struct. There we go. Okay, so here's a struct, here's a class for the view input mapping context. And all I'm doing is describing properties here that I'm going to use in my blueprint. Remember, what I'm doing here with my class, this stuff right here, is I'm going to connect to my blueprint, right? I can't connect to my blueprint in any other way. I got to do it this way, okay? Okay, so view property, edit anywhere, categories of blueprint. Next, I want to do the same thing, and this time I want to do T object pointer, and instead of view input action like this is giving me, what I want is, I want to forward declare again. So class view input action. Up here, that's what I'm forward declaring. And down here, it's going to be the movement action. Movement action. There we go, movement action. Okay? So again, I've got two properties right now. One for the context and one for the action. Let's add two more. Right? One for the look action. That's correct. And one for the jump action. No. There we go. All right, so that is what I need. So that is really, in a nutshell, everything you need for your dot H. So again, what are these things? Why do we need properties? Because remember that the IA action, we don't have a blueprint that I can connect stuff with here. I can't just say IA action and connect that. It doesn't exist. It exists in general editor. It doesn't exist here. There is no IA action. I have to map that in the editor and connect it to my C++ back here. That's what I gotta do. Okay? So that's why I gotta put these properties. Okay, that's the first thing. The next thing I need to do is I need to add jump, move, and look. These functions, I need to add them so that they're here inside of my .cpp. They don't exist right now. They're just, all they are is signature. Let's do that. So this one, and let's add that in. There it is. And then we can also add move and the look. So I can do that by just going into the little screwdriver here and clicking on create definition. And same thing with this one. I can go to screwdriver, hover over, create definition. And what it does is it creates a definition for my function. The way the definition works, you've got the function name and the signature, the entire signature here, this part. And then this part here is the name of the class, followed by the delimiter symbol, the delimiter operator, which basically says this move function belongs to this class, and it returns 4. That's the new thing. Instead of me typing it, I just used Visual Studio's tooling. Okay? All right, now that I've got this part, I know that jump is just going to be the superclass. I'm not going to change my jump method. It's built into my character, so I can just use it like this. Okay? I certainly am, because I've gone through this twice in one day, it's like crazy, right? Is here. I can see that I've got some of this stuff here typed up for me instead of me typing it manually by hand. So I'm not gonna hand bomb it, I'm gonna put it like this. So in my begin play, if I go back to my begin play function here, underneath the super call, I can just put in this. But the problem that I have here is I'm missing two includes. This include, let's put that at the top of my and also this one, just two includes. So I've done this so that way you don't have to type it in. It's kind of a long include. And then this way, you have all the components and the subsystems you need. And what we've done here, guys, if you look here in the 4 declarations, is we've met. I've secured my promise. Whatever I said I promised to do, right here when I use these includes, my promise is met. Because basically the includes include all the classes that I need for everything in here. So what am I doing here in my begin play? Well, I'm saying the same thing I did in my blueprint, right? If you look at my blueprint, I have the example here, which is, hey, look, this is what I've added, look, this is what my blueprint looks like. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying, hey, player controller, I want you to cast yourself as a, controller, cast yourself as a player controller. This is what I'm doing here, this part, right? Okay, let's get access to the enhanced low input local player subsystem. That's right here, right? Okay, well, let's now map my context. So that's right here. Okay, so all of this is really just this again. Okay, so that's what I've done here. Same. And the same thing goes with move and look. Let's do the move one. So move, pick my move function, and I'll talk about this. So the great thing about C++ is, I mean, again, I'll talk about it in a second, but you can see that the value is of type vector 2D. That's what it is. So basically here in my move function, I'm just splitting it up. I'm getting X and Y values, just like I did before. And if you look at what I'm doing here, so here is my value X and value Y. There it is, movement X and movement Y. And then I'm using these to add movement input, which is the add movement input node. What I want you to take away from this is that the nodes that you see in the Unreal Editor exist in some form in the C++, yes. So, can you bear with me and then I'll And then finally the look function. So let's get this look function going. Same thing here, the look function is almost identical. The calls that I'm using are almost identical to the ones I'm using in blueprints. So blueprints, again, they look like this, where I add a controller yaw input. Here I'm doing the same thing. I add controller yaw input with the exact same calls. Right? This function exists here in C++. Okay, and now the last part is this part that does not exist. This does not exist in C++. Blueprints. It only exists in C++, where I do my mapping. This is like mapping 1-to-1, and that is this part. So what this does is it binds, it does all the binding between the actions, the input action, and my functions. Right. So here's my input action: move action, look action, jump action. I'm going to pull those down in blueprints, and then when someone does something with those, it's going to call a move, look, or jump function. That's what it's going to do here in C++. All right, that's really it in a nutshell. Let's put this up on DevOps. So let's say data if index let's say added C++ movement functionality. And then what I'm going to do, finish off, bear with me guys, I'm almost done. I'm going to control F5. Control F5 will build, now it should build now, and it should take me right into Unreal Engine. Okay? I haven't added anything new, and as a result, it should build right into Unreal Engine. Right, like I said, let's see what it's giving me. Could not write file, access to path, C file, Epic Games. Binaries.net Unreal Build Tool is denied. So I gotta do the same thing. So I'm gonna do file save, that's fine. Dave's some denial stuff. Totally okay. And probably because I have this open, who knows? But, or maybe it's this, and someone interested in the same thing, so let's say intermediate, save intermediate derived data class and binaries, let's build those, and let's go over here, and let's go to, generate the studio project files. Almost done, as far as I know it looks like it's far away, but it's not far away, right? And then once I've done that, then I'm going to go to, just a double click on it. There we go. And it should be built and launched on Unreal Engine. Now, when it does, when this launches on Unreal Engine, then the expectation is that it's going to have all my changes, okay? Now, something that I have to do, I have work to do on the Unreal Engine side. Now that I have my class working perfectly, I have to inherit from that class, not from character. Character is the default class that my MVP underscore FPS character derives from, and I get a point to my class in order for it to do that. And let's start right now. Let's see. Yeah, normally you don't have to do that many times, but guys, like I said, this is your fallback. Worst case scenario, delete those 4 folders and rebuild everything, and it should always work, other than you. Yes? Should. Come back. Give me a second. Okay, so now that I'm back here, I have my class, here's my class, and I can open up Visual Studio, Visual Studio. I'll let that open up for you for a second. Weird connection errors, for sure. Okay, good. And then in Unreal Engine, I can go to my blueprints. So here's my blueprints for, here we go. Here's my blueprints. And notice that in my class settings on the top, take a look guys, please. I'm almost done. Guys, please pay attention. Parent class, see this parent class thing? I can change it from this to FPS character. Okay, so what this does is it points now to my C++ character instead of the default character class. Okay? File and save. Now, I don't need these connections anymore. So I can kind of get rid of them. I can go press Alt left right here, 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 and here. So I don't need these things anymore. Okay? And once I get rid of those things, and I can go to input, and then I can map these inputs manually. So for example, here I've got mapped the input mapping context. I got to map the move action. I can map the look action, and I can move and map the jump action. Once I've done these things, right? Because I got to do that manually, then I should be able to play. And now, instead of me using the blueprints, I'm using C++. And this is what your in-class exercise 2 is. Great. I want you to do this. So which is where my blueprint is using FPS character, and I'm not connected here in any way to my blueprints. My blueprints are not connected, and yet I'm still operational because I'm using my C++ code. Okay, question for you before we go for today. Blueprints or C++, which one? Some people are going to say blueprints, right? Because in this case, because the blueprints are easy to do, you're like, you know, it was working with blueprints, why didn't we break it if it was already working? But there's going to come a time where we have an algorithm, building an algorithm that's complex. And the blueprints are going to look like a nest of vipers, okay? It's crazy, like lines everywhere. And you know what? Your C++ code is going to be this big, okay? That's when you decide what to do. Should I do C++ or blueprints? And my friends, this is what this course is about. Learning C++, learning blueprints, and then kind of figuring out which one to do. Okay? So for homework, in-class exercise 2 is due tomorrow night at midnight. This is what I want you guys to do. Okay? I want you guys to be able to map it so that you can use your C++ class for movement without using blueprints at all. like the blueprint notes, okay? Make sense? Good luck. I know it's a lot, but, after this,